Welcome to Rescue Paws Stories, your go-to place for heartwarming and emotional humans and animals stories. 8-year-old Emily was known around her neighborhood not for her loudness or presence, but for her kindness. While the other kids ran and laughed, Emily would often sit quietly on the park bench, her lunchbox perched on her lap, her legs swinging gently above the grass. She had no siblings and few friends, and her afternoons were usually spent in the company of her books and imagination. Her father, a single parent working long shifts at the local auto shop, had taught her to be gentle, generous, and always to look out for those smaller than herself. It was on one such afternoon that Emily saw the dog. It was scruffy, clearly a stray, with a coat matted from weeks, maybe months, of surviving on the streets. Its ribs were visible beneath its fur, and its eyes held a hunger not just for food, but for kindness. As the dog approached, Emily didn't flinch. Instead, she slowly unwrapped half of her peanut butter and jelly sandwich and held it out with both hands. The dog hesitated at first, then cautiously stepped closer and gently took the sandwich. Emily smiled. "You can have the rest tomorrow, too," she whispered. The dog stared at her for a moment longer, then disappeared into the shadows of the nearby alleyway. The next day, as promised, Emily returned with another sandwich, this time with an extra slice of turkey, her own little sacrifice. She waited, and just like the day before, the dog emerged. But something was different. This time it wagged its tail, and it stayed longer. She named him Patch after the white spot on his eye. Days turned into weeks. Patch began to follow her from a distance, staying near the park, always appearing at lunchtime. Emily began talking to him, telling him about her dreams, how she missed her mom, and how sometimes she wished she had a brother or sister. Patch never replied, but his eyes told her he was listening. Then one rainy afternoon, Patch didn't show. Emily waited on the bench, her sandwich slowly getting soggy in her hand, her small face filled with worry. She returned home that day, quieter than usual. That night, a thunderstorm hit. Lightning crackled across the sky, and Emily couldn't sleep, her thoughts with the dog out there, alone and cold. But the next morning, everything changed. Her father was already gone for work, and Emily was getting ready for school when a loud barking echoed through their street. Curious, she rushed outside. There, at the front gate, soaked from the storm but very much alive, was Patch. But he wasn't alone. He was barking furiously at the front steps. Confused, Emily walked toward him and noticed something odd. Muddy paw prints leading to the back of the house, and then the back door, which was slightly ajar. Her heart skipped. They never left the door unlocked. She called her neighbor, Mr. Jensen, an ex-cop, who came running with his old flashlight. Together they stepped inside carefully. Moments later, Mr. Jensen's voice boomed, "Call the police!" Hidden in the laundry room was a man with a crowbar and a ski mask, an intruder. He had broken in during the storm, likely planning to wait for everyone to leave the house, but Patch had sensed it. The stray dog Emily had fed out of love had come back, not for food, but to protect her. The police came, and Patch became the neighborhood hero. Word spread, and soon people began offering to adopt him. But Emily knew he was already home. Her father, though initially unsure, agreed. "Seems like he chose us," he said, ruffling her hair. Emily grinned wider than she ever had. Months passed. Patch became more than just a dog. He was her shadow, her guard, her best friend. He walked her to school, sat beside her during thunderstorms, and growled at any deliveryman who looked even remotely suspicious. But most importantly, he filled the quiet spaces of her life with joy, loyalty, and protection. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it's just a sandwich shared on a quiet afternoon that turns into a bond stronger than anyone could imagine. Patch had become part of the family, and as the days rolled into seasons, he proved himself to be more than just a stray. He was loyal, obedient, and almost eerily perceptive of Emily's moods. On days when she returned from school with teary eyes because of bullies or loneliness, Patch would nuzzle into her lap, refusing to leave her side until she smiled. When her father came home tired and stiff from work, Patch would meet him at the door, tail wagging, eyes shining like he knew he needed to be the bright spot in a long day. One chilly December morning, Emily's school was preparing for a holiday fundraiser. She had written an essay titled "The Dog Who Saved Me," detailing her journey with Patch, the sandwich, the stormy night, the break-in, and how her life changed after his arrival. The teachers were so moved, they invited Emily to read it in front of the whole school. On the day of the event, Patch was allowed to attend, wearing a little red scarf around his neck and sitting patiently beside Emily on stage. She read her story slowly, voice soft but sure, tears welling in many eyes across the gymnasium. When she finished, Patch placed his paw gently on her foot, like he understood every word, and the applause that followed shook the room. But the most unexpected moment came later. Among the crowd was an elderly woman with a cane, sitting silently in the back row. After the event, she approached Emily and her father with tear-filled eyes. "That dog," she said, her voice trembling. "He's not just a stray. He's my son's K9 partner, Buddy. My son was an officer who passed away 2 years ago in a highway accident. Buddy ran off after the funeral, and we never saw him again." They were stunned. The woman knelt in front of Patch. "Buddy?" she whispered. Patch tilted his head, then licked her hand gently, whining softly. Something inside Emily twisted, joy, sadness, and awe all at once. They stood in silence until the woman spoke again. "He was never just a dog. He was trained to protect. It doesn't surprise me one bit that he found someone who needed him." Emily looked at her father, who knelt and patted Patch's head. "He belongs with Emily now. He saved her." The woman nodded, smiling through her tears. "And she saved him too." That night, Emily sat beside Patch, holding him a little tighter. She now knew that the love she had found in a cold, hungry stray was actually part of a bigger story, a hero's journey that began long before she met him, and it would continue in every sandwich shared, every storm weathered, and every quiet moment they'd face together. Because sometimes, destiny hides behind the smallest acts of kindness and comes home on 4 legs. As winter passed into spring, Emily and Patch became inseparable, their bond deeper than anyone could explain. Patch, once a forgotten, hungry stray, was now a local legend. The town knew him as the dog who'd protected Emily, touched lives at the school, and had a mysterious past as a K9 hero. People would stop on the street just to pat his head or leave little treats on Emily's porch with handwritten notes that read, "For the bravest dog." Emily's father noticed something remarkable. Patch seemed to respond to certain sounds and commands, military hand signals, radio static, even the sound of sirens in the distance. It was clear that Buddy, the K9 dog Patch once was, still remembered his training and his mission to protect, to serve, to love. But Patch also started doing something strange. Every Thursday afternoon, he would walk to the end of the driveway and sit, staring toward the hills. He'd wait there for hours, unmoving, ears perked. At first, Emily worried. Was he waiting for his former handler? Was he saying goodbye? Or just remembering? Then one Thursday, something incredible happened. A car pulled into their driveway. It was the elderly woman, Buddy's previous owner, and with her was a young man in uniform. He introduced himself as Officer Daniel Gray, a former rookie who had trained alongside Emily's father years ago. "I heard about your dog," he said gently, "and I came to say thank you. Buddy was there for me once. Looks like now he's been there for your family too." Daniel knelt and whistled a soft, specific sound. Patch's ears twitched. He trotted over, gently sniffed Daniel's hand, and then licked it once before returning to Emily's side. "He remembers," Daniel smiled, "but he's made his choice." The old woman approached, placing a medal in Emily's hands. It was worn with the words, "Valor and Loyalty," engraved into the surface. "This belonged to my son," she said softly. "I think Buddy, wants you to have it." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she looked at Patch. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. The woman smiled. "You gave him a second life. That's more than enough." Years later, Emily would grow up to become a veterinarian, inspired by the bond she shared with one injured, abandoned soul who had saved her as much as she had saved him. Patch lived out his days in peace, with warmth, love, and bedtime stories from the girl who once offered him half a sandwich and a whole heart. And every Thursday, long after his legs had gone stiff and his muzzle had grayed, he still sat by the driveway, not in sadness, but in gratitude. Because some bonds, once forged, never fade. They live on, in memories, in acts of kindness, and in the quiet loyalty of a dog who chose love over everything else. Years rolled on like the quiet turning of pages in a well-loved book. Emily, now a young woman, had a small animal rescue clinic on the edge of town named Patch's Place, a sanctuary for abandoned dogs, wounded strays, and creatures society had forgotten. The logo outside bore the silhouette of a floppy-eared dog sitting next to a little girl, both staring out into the horizon. Inside her clinic office was a photo, weathered and framed in reclaimed barnwood, of a tiny girl holding a sandwich. Crouched beside a scruffy dog with the gentlest eyes, and beside it, on a velvet cloth, rested the medal with the words, "Valor and Loyalty." Patch had passed peacefully one spring morning, lying in his favorite spot under the maple tree in the backyard, his head resting against Emily's foot. She had known the time had come, and with trembling hands, she had whispered, "It's okay now, Patch. You can rest." The whole town attended the memorial. Even Officer Daniel came, bringing flowers and a folded flag. Children who had grown up hearing tales of Patch's bravery left notes, dog treats, and drawings beside his grave. Emily never forgot what Patch had given her. Not just companionship, but courage, empathy, and purpose. And every time a frightened animal walked through the doors of her clinic, she remembered how it all began, with a sandwich, a storm, and the soft, unwavering gaze of a dog who saw her heart before anyone else did. Somewhere, she liked to believe, Patch was still watching over her, and in the rustle of leaves, in the patter of soft paws, and in the loving nuzzle of every dog she saved, he was always there. Because love like that never really dies. It just finds new hearts to live in.